Hello, and welcome to Ignite. My name is Matt Hayes, and I'm the VP of SAP Business at Qlik. And this year, Qlik is proud to be a sponsor of the Ignite event. I also want to encourage you to stay until the end of the presentation and demonstration so that you can see how we've developed a joint proof of value program where both Microsoft Azure and Qlik have partnered together to offer customers a proof of value that really helps customers see the value for themselves using their own data. We also have a virtual booth as part of the Ignite event. The proof of value offer is laid out in our virtual booth as well. So please, at the conclusion of the presentation or at any time during the event, you're welcome to join our virtual booth. Today, we're going to be talking about leveraging SAP data into Azure Synapse and enabling that SAP data for analytics, AI, and machine learning. This initial slide illustrates the process, taking data from the SAP applications on the left, processing the data through our Qlik Data Integration platform, delivering it into Azure Synapse, organizing and automating the creation of the data warehouse into data marts, and then consuming the data through applications such as Power BI or Azure Machine Learning. When we're loading the data into Synapse, there's a couple things to think about. One is we deliver the data into Synapse not only in full load, but also with real time through our change data capture mechanisms. We automate some basic transformations to quickly load and optimize the data into the data warehouse. We consider the SAP metadata, knowing that the SAP metadata might be required to normalize the data coming from SAP. We back this up with years of SAP experience, having dozens of SAP experts at Qlik focused on the SAP market as one of our key and strategic markets, and of course enjoying the partnership that we have with Azure, and SAP data integration being one of the key initiatives of the partnership between Qlik and Azure. This architecture slide paints the picture. On the left side of the screen, you see the data coming from the different sources. It's normal for our customers to be sourcing data from SAP applications as well as data from other sources. When it comes to SAP applications, we have different processes and techniques for taking the data out of SAP. Of course, we have our database connectivity and log-based change data capture, but we also have an application level connectivity that allows us to take data directly from the application, leveraging the extractor endpoint. When Qlik Data Integration processes the data, you can see how we process the data vertically on the left. We do the DDL propagation, delivering the objects into Synapse. Then we load the data and then provide the real-time updates through change data capture. And then once the data is landed into Synapse, we use Compose, which is our data warehouse automation solution, across the top there horizontally. We handle the data model generation, schema creation, code generation, all the way through to generation of the data mart. And of course, once the data mart is created, it can then be consumed by the end application. In this example, it'll be Power BI. Couple notes on the bottom here. We normalize the SAP data. We do a lot of work to normalize the SAP data. We handle the pool and cluster tables, which are prevalent in ECC. We simplify the data model, making it so that users don't have to search and find what tables contain the data they're interested in. I mentioned earlier that we propagate the metadata. Example of this would be that we load the text for the data dictionary objects, which means that when you create the table in the target, you have the opportunity of creating the table using the standard SAP field name or replacing it with the text in English or any other language. And then the data itself, for example, a company code field that's normally just a numeric value, we replicate the text behind that so that you can replace the numerically stored value with the actual text of that company code value. All of this is designed to normalize the data and make it easier to work with in the target system. Another thing that it does is it makes it easier to connect the SAP data with data from non-SAP sources. That could be really beneficial in enhancing the value of the data. So how we do it and what you're going to see in the demo today, we're going to use our extractor endpoint, which involves leveraging the standard SAP extractors to take the data out of SAP. That data is going to be loaded into Replicate, and the replication tasks are going to be responsible for loading the data into Synapse. We're going to use Compose, and when we use Compose to deliver the data mart, we're actually going to use pre-built Compose models. And you'll see that our pre-built Compose models are designed around common and core SAP business functions to lower the time to value and make it so that those data models can be generated faster. We have Qlik Catalog, which allows you to publish the data, helps you understand who's using the data, who's subscribing to the data, and the popularity of that data. And then if we're going to deliver the pre-built models to create the data marts, we might as well deliver some pre-built application templates. So what you're going to see is some pre-built templates that are built in Power BI that focus on some common and critical KPIs that most customers would be interested in so that we can have effective dashboards right out of the box. Again, all of this is focused on lowering the time to value for our customers. So if I get into the details on it, this is what it looks like. We're looking at the order to cash process here. Focusing on the order to cash process within SAP, on the left you can see some of the extractors that would be commonly used to capture and bring over sales order type data. The data is then loaded through Qlik Data Integration. by populating that data into replication tasks and delivering it into Synapse. Then we have our pre-delivered models around order to cash that we deliver with Compose. This will be the resulting data marts that will be used. And as the data is cataloged, the data becomes accessible to users and critical KPIs are documented. And finally, it all comes together with the front-end app that leverages the data. So this is an example of the different front-end apps that could be pointing at that data that you could use to generate the analytics. So our vision behind the SAP accelerators and these pre-built models focuses on common SAP business processes that many customers use. The example I showed just now was order to cash. There's others that are developed. We have models that focus on financial analytics, inventory management, order to cash, and procure to pay. And these are some of the areas of detail where you can derive those analytics. Now, why would you do this? Obviously, every company that's leveraging data and enhancing data and deriving analytics from their data, they're looking for ways to save money. So looking at the manufacturing and retail sector, cost savings is key. Businesses with optimal supply chains have 50% lower costs related to their supply chain. Of course, as 2020 showed us, supply chain disruptions could dramatically impact business. And being on top of that by looking at the data in real time and making adjustments based on data in real time can really impact. Real-time information is key. Traditionally, if you're using SAP BW or reports, you're looking at data day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, quarter-to-quarter, and often the changes you make in your business processes might be too late and you might miss an opportunity to reduce cost. And of course, customer experience is key. 86% of buyers will pay more for a better customer experience. Again, understanding the data in real time, you can improve the customer experience. Looking at the data in real time and identifying things that are going to disrupt distribution, how long it takes to get product to customers, that all factors into the customer experience. So what we want to do next is bridge this from a technical business process function into actionable insights and data literacy around SAP. Focusing on the enterprise business capabilities, you can see how we're going to focus on taking the data from the ERP system, use the real-time insights of that data to improve the customer experience, integrate the data into modern analytics applications such as Power BI, how we can leverage AI and ML to understand what the data is actually telling us, and look for optimizations in the supply chain that can help lower costs and increase profitability. So what's happening in SAP? It's running your business. You're processing orders, you're controlling and moving inventory, you're paying your vendors and employees, you're maintaining your company financials. It's the lifeblood of the business. Your business operates every day in SAP, in every function of the business. Essentially, for most companies that run SAP, it's the core system of record. So what you want to do is you want to look at different pieces of the business and create a vision for how you're going to leverage this data, how you're going to enhance it by combining the SAP data with data from other sources, and what are the actionable insights you want to derive from the data. We often talk at Qlik about data-driven business decisions. This is key. Every company's been doing this for years. The better you get at it, the more value you get from the data, the faster and more nimble you can be invoking change, and the more that those changes can actually impact the bottom line. So when it comes to the customer experience, shifting of customers' needs, what are the buying patterns, understanding where product is and where it needs to be, all of that is data that you can look into to try to improve the customer experience. Manufacturing. This is a big part. Reducing scrap and rework, reducing energy use, making sure that equipment on the plant floor is maintained properly and proactively. These are all things that are going to enhance the efficiency of how the business is running, and this information is in the data. Logistics and supply chain. We already talked about this. 2020 was really the biggest year ever to really help understand how supply chain disruption affects the business. And if the supply chain is disrupted and you make adjustments a week later, it might be too late. If you can identify where supply chain is being disrupted and make a change or optimize the business process within the day or within a day of that change, you stay more competitive for sure. And engineering and innovations. If you can reduce your product development cost, if you can improve your time to market for products, if you can look at your product lifecycle and really understand where it's going, leveraging real-time data, these are all things where the data that's processing through the business daily can be leveraged in real time or in near real time. Whether it's a human that's looking at that data and looking at the dashboards and analytics and drilling down and understanding what's happening, compare that to a machine learning model that's looking at the data and understanding how the data is trending and publishing actionable insights or alerts to the business to make them aware of something that they might not actually see is all going to be value. But that's enough talking about it. Let's see it in action. So for that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, David Ferrix, who's going to walk you through a demonstration. Dave, take it away.
Thanks, Matt. So let's go ahead and get into the details of what we discussed just a few minutes earlier with this offering from Qlik around the SAP accelerators for Microsoft. It all starts with the process of getting the data out of SAP and landing it into Synapse. So the way that we do that is with a product called Qlik Replicate, which we referenced earlier. And what we do in that scenario is that we're going to connect up to SAP and start extracting data. It's pretty straightforward. Now, as Matt alluded to, there's a couple different ways of doing this. We can go at the base tables and get the VBAPs and the VBEPs and the VBACs and all those type of entities, and that's perfectly fine, and that's a great way of pulling data. But in this use case, what we're going to be doing is leveraging those SAP extractors, as we referenced a little bit earlier. And the reason we do that is that these are the transformation steps in order to load data into SAP Business Warehouse. So there's actually a lot of business logic, a lot of transformation, a lot of consolidation of the data that's already happening that we're going to be able to take advantage of from the Qlik point of view and get a jump start on getting the data ready for analytics. So the process is really simple. We're going to go ahead, we're going to connect up to our SAP system using those extractors. We're going to pick the extractors that we need, and we're going to write that data into Synapse. If we take a look at this data, we need to understand that the process is more complicated, and we're going to add that value with the Qlik technology. And the way that we do that is the data in its raw state is 5-digit shorthand German codes. It's very hard to understand for those that aren't hardcore SAP people. But again, this is step one. Get the data out of SAP, put it into Microsoft. Next, we actually go through the process of adding the logic, doing the business transformation. The first step that we do is we get the information we put on the business-friendly names. We still keep those technical names because some people really understand that world and want to live there, and that's great. But casual users or business users may want to understand English-friendly names. Now, we've mined this information directly out of SAP, so we can do it in any language. In this case, it's English, but we just as well could do any of the supported metadata language that exists inside of SAP. Okay, now we can actually use this information. We understand what it stands for. Now we have to go through the process of modeling the relationships. Which of the extractors contain which sets of information that we need? If we think about the use case that we're discussing today, it's going to be around orders to cash and inventory management. In orders to cash, what are the parts of the sales process? Well, you need sales documents, we need shipping documents, we need billing documents, we need scheduling documents, we need accounting documents. So how does that information all cross against the different dimensionality we need? Customer and sales office and sales org and material and things of that nature. So we've done this work. We have the SAP expertise in-house in Qlik to design this based on a standard implementation of SAP and build out those relationships. Okay. Now that we've got those relationships, we understand how the data works, we're going to go ahead and actually create this automated data warehouse. And this is where Qlik Compose really shines because it's going to manage the entire process. It's going to create all of the SQL, it's going to create all the DDL, and it's going to run it on Synapse. And it's going to create that content for the text tables, it's going to create information to process currency, it's going to take the fact information, and it's going to build out a vault-style best practices warehouse where we manage the hub tables, we manage the surrogates, the solely change dimensions, all of those really hard things about a warehouse, Compose is going to manage for us. Okay, so now that we've got our warehouse, we need to get it ready for the users to consume. And this is where we step in with our analytics ready data marts. Now, for those of you familiar with SAP, these are going to look somewhat familiar to you. You're going to recognize that sales orders, schedule line, billing documents look a lot like SAP info cubes. And that's kind of the process we took when we designed this, is we wanted to be familiar for people with an SAP background. But we've taken a couple different steps here. Within Compose, we have the ability to create transactional marts, which are going to show this information at the most granular detail level, which is great for certain types of reporting, but potentially not great for analytics. So we're also going to create what we call aggregate views, and these aggregate views are going to pre-calculate some of the KPIs. Now, sales and distribution, orders to cash, it's relatively straightforward. We're selling a thing and we understand the KPIs around selling of those things. Similarly, when looking at billing and scheduling, relatively straightforward. But where it gets interesting is, we're going to try and also conform those dimensions, right? So instead of having flakes upon flakes upon flakes of data, we're going to also consolidate it. So with this, we have transactional marts, we have aggregated marts, all sharing the same set of conformed dimensionality to give us a nice star schema that Ralph Kimball would be proud of. Now this, for example, was just the orders to cash model. If we look at something that's a little more complicated, for example, inventory management, we start looking at supply chain, we're doing the same type of thing where we have, transactional marts and we have aggregated marts. But I want to show with you some of the complicated nature of this. So if we're looking around quantity inspection information, we get a thing that we're going to start using to manufacture with, and is it good quality or do you need to return it? There's a ton of information we need to be contextually understanding about SAP, which is, what movement types are we looking at? Which sort of stock values, movement types, stock relevance. So all of these calculations, all these considerations, we've gone through the process of putting this logic into building these aggregated marts. So when we look at these KPIs, all of the hard work of sorting out the complex business logic has already been done and pushed into the model. Now, if we need to go into the transactions and get the low-level information, that is there as well. So, again, building on what we've talked about earlier, we're taking the raw data, we're landing it. We're now doing the data warehouse automation and transformation, adding in all the business logic around SAP and all of the complicated nature of these transformations to move this information through the data pipeline. And we built this information, as Matt addressed earlier, for financial analytics, inventory management, orders to cash, and procure to pay. Well, what do we do with this information when we're done? And I'm going to set this up for Charles here in a couple minutes. Is that we can take this information and again, it's just creating and managing Synapse tables and Synapse data. So what we can see here is I can take a look at, aggregated sales metrics orders. That this is the output of what we showed in that data mart. And I can see that it's building all the information. It's creating these OIDs, which are our surrogate keys. And Compose is managing this entire process of keeping this data synchronized and managing the data as changes comes and goes with inside of it. And we're able to take this information and then create Power BI output with it. So we've got some pre-built dashboards that we've gone ahead and created. And if we take a look at one of these, not only are we able to create these nice looking dashboards, but even in the case of working with external data. So what we did with this sales order metrics dashboard is I took information that was coming out of the ERP system, which is great. This is our orders to cash process. This is what we sold. This is when it was scheduled. This one was delivered, and capturing those metrics. But we're also able to go and grab something, for example, from Salesforce or Dynamics and bring in the sales process leading up to the closing of those orders. So, again, the data that we're getting at here in Compose and Replicate isn't limited to just SAP data. We can build into those Compose models and design any additional data that needs to be brought in to accentuate whether it's the supply chain, whether it's the orders to cash process and the sales process behind that. Again, this is an extensible framework that we've created from the Qlik side to allow the customizations, the mappings, the external data to be able to fold that information in and really create a framework and a template for really customizing this based on a user's or a customer's SAP installation and how they run their infrastructure. So that's really all I had today. Again, I just wanted to kind of walk through the process of what we've done of replication of the data warehouse automation, being able to take that information across these multiple areas of finance or inventory management or orders to cash or procure to pay, land it in Synapse, transform it, manage it, and then get it ready for Power BI to create the dashboards. So with that, Charles, I'm going to go ahead and stop, and I'll turn it over to you.
Microsoft and Qlik have partnered together to develop a new offer for our customers for a free proof of value for integrating this data from SAP into Azure Synapse. Microsoft is providing Azure Synapse expert support for free deep dives, expert support for the half-day solution architecture, free software subscriptions for Synapse Analytics and Power BI for the duration of the proof of value, and then subject matter expertise to ensure you're getting the most performance and optimal configuration of the platform possible. Matt, do you want to just walk through quickly what the capabilities or offer from Qlik is?
Sure, and we're happy to put our money where our mouth is too. The free deep dive session, I mentioned earlier that we have a deep domain knowledge of SAP experts on hand. No sense in having them just sitting here building our software. We'd rather have them helping our customers as well. The one-on-one deep dive is very valuable for our customers because we can understand your requirements and work with you collaboratively to really understand what you're trying to get out of it. And also free subscription, free software. Our Qlik Data Integration platform and the solutions within that, and our data warehouse automation solution is available to you during the duration and the scope of the POV. And of course, our subject matter experts around SAP are available throughout the entire POV program.
Thanks, Matt. So let's tie a ribbon around this. You can get started today, evolving your business from ERP to EBC, as Matt described, gaining real-time insights, and of course, critically reducing costs with the industry-leading price performance of Synapse platform. You can click here to get started with the free proof of value. We'd like to thank you for joining the webinar today. We hope it was a valuable use of your time. Thank you very much.